Welcome to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement, a podcast where we dive into the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of the law enforcement officer.
Minor injury accident to the 2700 block of 156th Avenue Northeast.
All right, welcome back to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement. I'm your host, Vernon Phillips, and today we are joined with Kenny Warner. So he is a local deputy, but I'm going to turn it over to him to let him talk about himself, his background, his hobbies, some of that, and before we kind of jump into the discussion. So, Kenny, I'm going to give it over to you.
I'm Ken Warner. I started with the sheriff's office here in 2021. Something I always wanted to do. I grew up, always wanted to be a law enforcement officer. Some hobbies I like to do. I like to fish, anything outdoors, spend time with family. And most recently, working out.
Okay, so spend time with family. So now you got your family just grew a little bit here recently. So how's that transition been?
Losing a lot of sleep. I got a 2-month-old going on 3 months now. He decides he only likes to cry at night when I'm dead asleep. So
perfect. Well, so yeah, that definitely interrupts your sleeping habits, and we know that sleep is vital to just your body and your brain, but that's also something that plagues the law enforcement community often is because of the shift work and the various schedules. It just seems like you can never get enough sleep, and that seems to be one of the main issues a lot of people have in law enforcement is sleep, even without adding a newborn to the mix. So,
absolutely.
So as we kind of move on, obviously, the profession is a demanding profession. It takes a toll on you as an individual. It just requires a lot of you. So what is something you do to maintain your overall, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health? What do you do to keep yourself just, well-rounded in all of those areas?
So ultimately, I really try to get into the church. That's a big thing now, more so now than after, an incident I went through. I was kind of slacking there for a while, but this was kind of the motivator to start doing the right thing. Definitely spending a lot more time with family. That's a big thing, especially with law enforcement officers, because I remember a guy named Doug Monda. I went to a seminar. He said, once you retire, he goes, where's the police department? Where's the sheriff's office? He goes, they're behind you, but who's in front of you? Your family. They've been there all along, and they may be strangers to you because you've given up everything for a job. So that's why now I'm trying to prioritize more time with family, just things like that. Try to get out, try to be active, not make excuses to not go to the gym, just things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are all important things. I mean, obviously, that spiritual component, getting back into church and that regular routine, but spending that time with family for sure, because we see that a lot of times in this profession that family is the one that takes, that kind of gets sidebarred, right? There's always that demand. There's always, another detail you can pick up. There's always another unit you can try out for. There's always something else that you can do, right, to fill that time slot. But, we got to be balanced in our approach, not only to the career, but also with our family, right? We got to make sure that, we're carving out that time to spend with them, but not just giving them the time we have left, but, giving them quality time with us and not what's left, because, let's face it, if we give them what's left, they're not going to get very much, are they?
No. Ultimately, us as law enforcement officers, basically, how it is, oh, how was your day? Oh, it was fine. It was good. And stuff, just trying to get to that point where you open up a little bit more, it wasn't a good day, that it's okay to talk to your family about, the bad days, the good days.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I think that's what a lot of, law enforcement, also first responders, don't do is they don't kind of communicate that with their family, right, with their support network. A lot of times they just want to be included, especially your significant other. They don't need to hear all of the, we talk about this often, but they don't need to hear all of the, the grimy details, right? All of the, like, just the nasty things, but they want to know if you've had a bad day, right? They want to know, like, if you come in and you're just kind of shut down, you're kind of just very stoic and you just got that, that resting, leave me alone face. they want to know, okay, what's going on. So it's okay to tell them like, hey, yeah, today was a pretty rough day. Um, there's just some calls for service that were really rough, and you know, I don't necessarily want to talk about it, but it's just going to take me a little bit to kind of flush that out to be able to fully engage. And I think that we need to do a better job of that. Is being able to communicate that for sure. So the other thing that you brought up was after the job, and we'll try to get into this a little bit later, but that's the other thing is like you pour so much time into this profession that when you retire, or when it's no longer there, you're left with, well, now what? Right? That's why it's so important to have other things that you're investing into. Whether that's you volunteering somewhere else, or getting involved with the church, or getting involved with some type of local, just community service, or some type of mission or something like that, because then that gives you purpose outside of your career. But then once the career is over, it's not like you just have no purpose anymore, right? And especially with your family, right? Because if you neglect your family your whole entire career, right, but then you go back and you try to rekindle that, after a 25-year career, um, that can be hard. But if you're making a direct effort and you're purposely, engaging with your family, and you're finding that balance, that's going to be there when you retire. So,
For sure.
so as we kind of look at the time that you've been in law enforcement, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that law enforcement are involved in, but kind of before we get into specifically some of the stuff that you've been involved in, and particularly one incident in general, do you think that as a profession that we're doing a good job with onboarding new recruits with what they're actually going to experience and how their life is going to change being in this profession?
To be honest, no, I don't think there's enough education out there. I think our agency is trying to take steps, to get to that point. But talking to friends and other agencies that I've met, the mental health side, it's kind of like you're a cop, toughen up. You signed up for this. You're supposed to be this hero and stuff. But at the end of the day, we're all people, and I think
Oh,
that's the
yeah.
problem too. We're all guilty of it. We push our feelings to the side. Oh, I'm a guy. I'm a tough guy. I can get through this or whatever. But deep down, it's eating you alive sometimes. I think, I think there needs to be more. I don't know how we're going to get there 100%, but I like everything that you're doing toward it for our agency, especially. But yeah, I think there definitely needs to be more mental health and more realistic what you're going to experience and stuff. Not just, oh, this is, I know how to fire my gun to defend myself, but what do you do after you have to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, because
So,
you're taught that, right? You're taught, the basic fundamentals of how to, engage, and how to defend yourself, and, how to fire your weapon. But like you said, are we instructed what to do after that? And I think that's a big thing. But not only that, not only for like you as an individual, officer or deputy, what about the family?
yeah.
Right? That's kind of a next chapter, that we're kind of looking at. But I think that's something that agencies should look at in general. Okay, so what about the family? Do we do any onboarding for the family and for the significant others? Like, okay, hey, look, your deputy, your officer was just involved in officer involved shooting. What does that look like? What does that look like for you? What does it look like for them? And how do you walk through that? How do you progress forward after that? And
Mhm.
I don't. I mean, I'm in contact with a lot of different agencies, but to my knowledge, I don't know of any agencies that actually do any type of onboarding for families also, and say, hey, this is how you respond to your officer, your deputy after they've been in an officer involved shooting. These are the things to look for. These are some of the things you might see. These things are normal. If it persists past this point, or if there's something else like this that's going on, now we need to have a conversation. And
Yeah.
here's some resources. Here's some numbers. So I think that's going to be a crucial next step, and in kind of addressing some of the stuff that we see. But
Mhm.
I think eventually, as things move forward and progress, I think that you'll see a change. I think that more agencies will get on board, and you'll start to see a shift. But I think it'll take a while.
Yeah, for sure. I liked how FDLE started that post-critical incident seminar. I think they're going on their third one. That one's starting to incorporate families more. So, the seminar, you can bring your spouse and they can experience the thing with you and they get to talk about what they go through. So I think that's a good first step.
Yep. And Billy Graham, uh, Billy Graham Ministries has a law enforcement retreat for officers and or first responders and their significant others. It's kind of like a marriage couples retreat where they can go and they can actually kind of flush out some of this stuff, maybe some things that have kind of arisen in marriage based on the critical incident that somebody's been through. So I think that, that's also a good resource that's out there as well. But the FDLE one that you're talking about, I think they're going on their third one that's coming up here in another month or so. And I know that I've heard good things about that's
Mhm.
been pretty well received, and they've been doing some good work with that. So,
Yeah.
but then just agencies in general, individually, just making sure that they're taking those steps and following up with their officers and taking the time to make sure that they're doing well. So obviously, here we are. We're talking about criticals. We're talking about how they impact, the individual officer. So I kind of already know where we're going to go with this, but obviously, you were just involved in probably to date, the worst critical incident that you've been involved in. So why don't you just kind of tell us about that, but also tell us, where you're at on the other side of that. So
Mhm.
because I think that's important. So it's important to talk about the things that like it's kind of one of those questions where people are like, "Oh, I hate that question. I hate when people are like, hey, what's the worst call you've ever been on, or what's the worst thing that you've ever experienced?" Well, and I understand that, but then also when we get into the law enforcement community, right, when we're talking about the community of just the brother and sisterhood, talking about that amongst each other, but also getting that out, I think encourages other people to not kind of push that stuff down and withhold and hold that in to the point where it just consumes them from the inside out. So the reason I do it is because I'm trying to get people to be more willing to say, yeah, I was involved in this, and these are some of the things that I did to get on the other side of it. And it's like, or even, hey, I'm not on the other side of it yet, but I'm working through to get there. So
Mhm.
so why don't you just tell us about your incident and kind of where you're at now?
So December 10th, 2023, probably one of the best nights I had on patrol ever. Hanging out with a good coworker of mine, Deputy DeMarco, and K9 Deputy Esquivel. Hanging out with DeMarco, we're having fun. We're just running around. There's not a lot of calls going on. It's a really good night for the county. So I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a good night. I'm going to go home on time. It's going to be nice. So flash forward a little bit. Deputy Esquivel and we decided to go to Ma Barker's house. And for people that don't know, that's the FBI's longest shootout in history was at that house. So we're checking it out, peeking and poking around. We're like, oh, this is so cool. This is history, when a homicide happens in Denellen. So K9 being K9, they got to go to that. It's a high priority call, obviously. So where I'm at in the county, I'm in the Ocklawaha side. So I'm far east of the county. Denellen's far west. So he takes off and goes to that. And I start thinking to myself, I'm like, my back's kind of sore. And for people that don't know how our schedule's set up, we can take an 8 hour day, every 2 weeks or whatever. So we're not at 84 hours, we're at 80. I'm thinking, man, I might take my 8 tonight. My back's kind of sore, and I never took my 8 at the time. So it was kind of a weird sign. I'm like, back's kind of sore. And then I get back in my car once Deputy Esquivel leaves and I see a message on my computer from dispatch saying, hey, we need you to go to Club Ton and help assist with clearing out the parking lot. There's a large crowd and the club's closing. It's not unusual for us to do that. We've had to do it multiple times. I've had to do it in the past. It's never been an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, oh, that'd be a nice little break, from patrol. It's kind of like a reward. You kind of get to take a break from some of the calls and, just go do something, hang out with other deputies. So I messaged dispatch. I said, hey, so sorry. I just saw this message. I'll probably be a couple minutes late because I wasn't in my car. They message back. They say, never mind. You don't got to go. I'm like, oh, okay. They said, yeah, Sarge said you don't got to go. I'm like, okay, that's fine too. So I go down. I meet up with another deputy. We're hanging out when I receive a call from the sergeant saying, hey, actually, we need you to go to club time. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'm on my way. Go to club time. Nothing out of the ordinary. It's a large crowd, but nothing too crazy. Nobody's being too rowdy or anything like that. So we're kind of letting them do their thing. I got my overhead lights on. I get out of my car and I walk up to Deputy Eck and Lieutenant Bullwinkle, who's the watch commander at the time. We're sitting there talking, and we're researching the suspect on this homicide that happened in Denellen. So Deputy X looking up the info, and I find out that the suspect, lives in Bellevue. And I'm like, that's close proximity to where we're at because we're in the shores now at this point, Silver Spring Shores. So we're looking, I'm like, we should really go check that house after because he just killed his girlfriend, and he's probably going to go to his mom's house where he lives. So we're talking about that, and about that time, I just get the most intense pressure in the back of my leg I've ever experienced. Just a huge hit back of my leg. And I think that's kind of weird. So I reach down and I grab my leg, and it's just it's pain. It feels like somebody threw a baseball at me as hard as they could. And then I just hear what I think's fireworks. And I'm thinking, that's kind of weird. Why are they shooting off fireworks right now? And then I feel the pain in my left leg. My legs are getting wet, and I realize I've been shot. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I end up, once reality sets in that, hey, you've been shot, you're home. I run to the back of my patrol car, drew my firearm, and I popped out around my patrol car, and all I saw was chaos. People running everywhere. Couldn't see who shot me. People were just scattering. So at this point, my legs are just, I can feel, feels like water's being dumped down my legs. And I realize that's blood. So
yeah,
training kind of just kicked in a little bit for me. I've done some training with the tourniquet and stuff, so I knew, okay, I need to get this tourniquet on. I don't know how bad it is. I haven't seen it, but it hurts pretty bad. So I go to the other side of my patrol car, and I use my wheel as cover in case he starts shooting again. So I sit down. I immediately draw my tourniquet. I wear it on the front of my gun holster. I slide it up my leg. I crank it down as tight as I can, and I'm starting to get really lightheaded at this point. The walls are closing in, and the whole time I'm thinking, this isn't fair. Like, why me? And it sounds so selfish, but in the moment, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, why me? This isn't how it's supposed to go. I'm just standing minding my own business. This is supposed to happen on a domestic, a traffic stop, not just me standing in a parking lot.
Yeah.
So that's going through my mind. And at that point, reality sets in again. Oh, I got another gunshot wound in my left leg, and I only have one tourniquet. Well, luckily, I had deputies with me, and they did an amazing job. They got on the radio. They immediately started calling for help while I was tending to myself. Deputy Eck provided cover in case the shooter came back. So it kind of put me at ease, knowing that, okay, I'm on high alert. I know it just happened, but I don't have to be in panic mode. I felt fine with that. Lieutenant Bullwinkle, she's helping put one tourniquet on. Deputy Peguero, he's putting the other tourniquet on, and he did an amazing job. I got to watch his body cam. He was working the club as a detail, and he ran from the front of the club toward the gunfire to ultimately help me.
Yeah.
And it just makes a bond too, like no other. People can say their job's like a family all they want, but until you've been through something like that, I don't know. So I'm sitting there, just getting super lightheaded, and I'm thinking, man, I have an unborn son on the way. I've been to shootings where people have been hit in the legs, and they've not been so lucky. And I've been to shootings too where it looks minor, and then they end up passing away at the hospital. So that starts going through my head, and I'm getting these highs and lows of, oh man, am I going to die? And then I'm praying to myself too. I'm like, oh God, forgive me,
Yeah.
And I'm just in my head. I'm like, if it's time, it's time. But, so I'm sitting there, reality's setting in, but you're going through highs and lows of, no, I'm fine. To this might really be the real end, I don't know. So I'm sitting there, it feels like an eternity. The pain's kicking in. I'm getting really lightheaded, like I'm going to pass out. And finally, Marion County Fire Rescue, they show up. They look at me. They're kind of giving me that weird look, and I've seen that look on calls before that they've been on. And I'm like, oh, man, this must not look too good. So the one, I believe he's the lieutenant with the fire side, he goes, pick him up and let's go. So they pick me up, load me up, and we haul butt to the hospital. One of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life was as I'm sitting on the bed with a stretcher while they're holding pressure on the gunshot wounds, I'm looking out the back glass, and all I see is police car after police car after police car going toward the scene. And that's ultimately what it's all about, because we really are a family.
Yeah.
And that just reinforced that, I felt some peace knowing, that, hey, they got me. But at the same time, you're also feeling that guilt that they're still there. Don't know where this guy is. I don't want them to get hurt. So I'm kind of in panic mode too. Like I said, I just keep thinking of the kids, and I'm like, oh, am I ever gonna see my kids again? Just
Yeah.
going on and on and on. And then I finally get to the hospital. I was a trauma alert, and they told me that I'm gonna go in for surgery. I've never had surgery, so I was scared of that too. Never been put under and stuff. You hear all these horror stories about, oh man, they get put under and they don't come back. So all these weird scenarios are playing in my mind. I'm like, oh, am I okay? Am I not okay? And then they start giving me blood through my neck, and then that's when one of the doctors, he said, oh, your color's coming back. You look a lot better, and your blood pressure's going up. And I'm like, okay, that's got to be a good sign. But then I'm also thinking, how low is my blood pressure?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
what's the deal? So it's just chaos in that hospital. There's a bunch of cops there from the local police department. They locked down the hospital. They're working on me. It's just probing me, poking me, ripping clothes off, everything. It's just chaos. So I'm sitting there, and then that's when one of the sergeants comes in. He goes, do you want me to notify your family? It's a hard question to ask,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And, I'm like, ultimately, yes, I want them to know, but at the same time, us kind of pushing our feelings aside, I don't want to put them through that, like,
Yeah.
I don't want them to be sad. So ultimately, I said, yeah, let them know. So the HC did a really good job. They sent multiple deputies to the house in case kids needed watch and stuff like that. And they drove my spouse over lights and sirens to the hospital. By that time, I got put in for surgery, and I was alert and talking, but that's all you know.
Oh
That's
yeah.
all I could say.
Yep.
He was talking to me, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Um, Flash forward a couple hours later, surgery. I got this gnarly scar on my leg. I wake up, and that was the best sleep I've ever had in my life. So, so I
Yeah.
wake up, and I still knew what happened, and I kind of like, oh man, that was really comfy. So I go back to sleep, and the lady's hitting me on the chest. She goes, no, wake up. So I wake up, and they're like, hey, you got people to go see. There's people worried about you. I'm like, okay. I get pushed into the hallway, and it was amazing.
Mm.
Captains, lieutenants, the sheriff himself, my family. It's just a good feeling. So that kind of happens. I'm in the hospital, mixed emotions. I'm like, I got people telling me like, man, it's not worth it. Don't go back. It's not worth it and stuff. And then you got some people saying, oh well, it could have been worse. You're really lucky. So it's just a mix of emotions. So, but I'm
Yeah.
telling myself, I'm like, I'm confident. I'm gonna go back. I'm in this position for the right reason. I want to do the right thing. I'm not the guy who's out there to try to ruin lives. I'm actually out there to. It sounds cliche, but I'm trying to help lives.
Yeah.
I get the same gratification as helping an elderly lady grieve the loss of her husband on a call that I'm working than I do taking somebody to jail. It's all the same for me. So that kind of goes by. I spent a few days in the hospital. I have to say the HU was great. You as well. You were great, making sure I was taken care of and our family was taken care of. Um, so that happens. Reality starts to set in that it's time to go home. So I go home, and then I'm informed, you're going to have a home health care nurse come every day. She's going to pull the gauze out. She's going to repack it on each leg and stuff. It's extremely
Oh
painful.
yeah.
It it was terrible. So that goes by. My partner, she goes back to work. So at that point, you're just kind of at the house alone, and all your friends are back at work.
Yep.
And I kept having this fear that like it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. It's out of my control. I'm not there, and it's going to be worse. I just kept having this fear. It just kept going through my mind. All the deputies that were there, I just kept thinking of them. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I don't want them to be at work. Ultimately, a couple times I was telling some of the deputies, like, hey, don't go to work,
Yeah.
which it was just that fear right after. But you're at home, everybody's reaching out, they're being great to you and stuff. But there does come some moments of like loneliness. You're just sitting there, got nothing to do. I was stuck to a couch. I could barely walk. So, I had to sleep on the couch. I could barely move. If I wanted food, somebody would bring it to me and stuff. But for 10 hours, I'm home alone.
Oh yeah.
So I'd be sitting there and it's just all those, you kind of replaying it. You're like, oh, what could I have done different? And you're kind of beating yourself up. You're like, oh, you start feeling really guilty that you put the other deputies through that. Like I could have controlled it. But in the moment, that's the stuff you're thinking. I'm thinking, I feel so bad that I made them go through that. And then seeing how it affected them, like seeing them cry and stuff like that. And like I said, these people I look up to, like these are some of the toughest people I know. And then seeing them cry, it made me feel like, oh, this is my fault.
Yeah.
Now I realize, it's normal. These things happen. Like it happens. It's out of our control. But so that goes by. I start getting stronger every day. Start going to physical therapy. And then ultimately, after about a month of sitting on the couch doing nothing, I go to light duty. I got put in a really cool spot in the sheriff's office where I got to, see how part of our HC works and see some really cool stuff. So that goes by. About 2 weeks after that, I'm like, I can't do this desk thing. It's killing me. I had to get back out on the road. All my friends are out there, they're worried. I'm worried about am I going to get back. So I go to the doctor on my follow-up appointment. I tell him, I say, look, I don't care what you got to do. You got to sign off on this. I got to go. And they're like, oh, no. You got more PT to do. And I said, well, look, I can bend my leg. I can do everything I got to do. I'm confident in myself. I want to go back. Ultimately, the doctor agreed, and he goes, yep, just don't make me regret this. Fair enough. I go back. First day on patrol. Scared. I'm thinking, kind of on hyper alert. I'm looking everywhere. I'm like, oh, man, this can happen again. Like, we train for everything. We train that, oh, yeah, this can happen. And it's in your mind that it can happen. But you're always kind of thinking, ain't going to be me. It's not going to be like that. I'm minding my business until it does happen. But flash forward now, I got to go to that post-critical incident seminar. I got to share my story with others who have been through similar things. And it kind of just normalizes the situation. It kind of takes that guilt feeling away. And it kind of takes that lonely feeling away. Like, if you're the only one in your age that's kind of been through that, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I know my friends are there for me 100%. But it's like, do they really know how I was feeling in the moment? Because it may be hard to describe. Talking to these guys who have had the same thing happen, it's like, okay,
yeah,
I'm not crazy. Like, that's a normal feeling. And ultimately, I'm at peace with what happened. If anything, it's made me a much better person. So, ultimately after the incident, I ended up joining the peer support, for our HC. I just felt it was right. I felt like I was called to do it. It was something I needed to do. Just to be there for other people during things, anything really. So that kind of inspired me. And then from that point, you sent me that post-critical incident seminar link if I was interested. And that's where I was like, you know what? Yeah. At first, I was really apprehensive. I'm not going to go to this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go because reading about it, it's talking about, you're basically sharing your feelings. Like I said, the cops were, nope, I'm okay. One of the best things I could have did was go. And I'm really urging other people too to go. It'll definitely change it. It's amazing. So you share your stories like that. It just normalizes everything. One of my favorite memories too from this whole incident, just showing that the community that we got at the sheriff's office was, y'all realized I didn't have Christmas lights at my house, and it was December because I was being lazy and I didn't put them up.
Well, I don't know if I would say you were being lazy.
Well, this is beforehand.
Maybe pre-incident. Maybe we can say
Correct.
you weren't being lazy. You were just procrastinating, right?
Yes, sir. So, so that happened, and obviously now, guys are giving me crap for not having lights. Ultimately, you and DeMarco made a little Facebook group about light up. I think he put Ken Doll's house. That's what he calls it. So, they put this terrible picture of me on Facebook. I'm holding this little stuffed animal in the hospital.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll be honest. And so that was all DeMarco's idea, man. That was he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got this idea," and I said, "Man, run with it." So
yeah, and that just shows the community we got and the friendships that we make. it's on a deeper level than just, oh yeah, I'll come to your kid's birthday party. It's a deeper level. We'll do anything
Yeah.
for one of our own. If we're going to risk our lives for a community that doesn't know us or may not like us, imagine what we're going to do for the ones that we love, care about, and work with every day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So this Facebook group gets made, and it's just a pile of people with food, Christmas lights, and I've never had a higher electric bill in my life. Probably see my house. Probably could have saw my house from space with all the lights that were put up. People climbing on the roof, trees, just whatever. That really touched me. Like, that just showed that, yeah, this is a good group of people. I'm happy to be a part of it. But yeah, the feeling's still there. You always kind of think like, occasionally, what if?
Yeah.
I'm kind of more at peace with it now. And ultimately, I hold no anger for the guy. At first, I was super mad.
Oh yeah.
I was mad. Deep down, I had this rage, and it was just like, it's not fair. You get me, I'm going to get you. We're going to be even and stuff, which is a terrible way to think. But as humans, I mean, it was just my natural reaction. I don't know if everybody goes through that, but that's how I felt in the moment. Ultimately now, if the guy was standing right in front of me right now, I'd probably thank him. You made my life hard temporarily, but you also helped me realize what's important in life. And you've made me more proactive with my life to do the things that I need to do. It's cliche. They say, tomorrow's not promised. But when you go through something like that, you really realize that tomorrow really might not be here. So it kind of makes you live with, it makes you live with more of a purpose, It makes you want to reach out to those people that you don't really talk to instead of, I'm kind of tired. I'll call them tomorrow. I'll text them tomorrow. I'll watch this movie with you tomorrow. Kind of gives you more of a purpose that, tomorrow's not promised. Let's make time for what's important today.
Oh yeah. Yep. So, I mean, obviously going through this whole entire thing, there's a lot of emotion there. There's a lot of stuff that, you had to work through. You had to just kind of unpack. You said yourself, it's just the ups and downs during the incident. Like, I'm going to be okay. Maybe I'm not going to be okay. Like, back and forth. But then even after that, just the isolation, right? Being, isolated by yourself. Having to deal with that, but then, getting back to regular patrol and then having to flush out those emotions of like, okay, this could happen again. Right. But it sounds like that on the other side of it, like it's really changed your perspective, on a lot of things, but for the better. And that's not to say that, you need to have some type of critical incident to change your perspective, because you don't, right? You can listen to, like your story or somebody else's story and be like, man, that's pretty wild. What can I do now to be proactive moving forward from this? And so, and I think that's something that it sounds like you're a little bit more willing to talk about and share. Like, hey, look, if you've been involved in something that critical incident, you need to go to this. You need to go to this post-incident debriefs that the FDLE's put on, because they're bringing commonality to what takes place, and it's because eventually you're going to be involved in some type of critical incident. It's not you're not going to go your whole entire career and not be involved in something that doesn't affect you in some way or another. It's just not statistically possible. So just giving that opportunity, having the opportunity to be able to go and meet with others who have experienced similar things. Just because they've experienced similar things doesn't mean that they feel the same way you do, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot that felt differently, but it gives you the ability to think, hey, you know what? I'm not the only one that's dealt with this. I'm not the only one struggling with, just this apprehension of getting back in the seat, getting back in the patrol car and going out like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like there's some fear, there's some apprehension here, there's some doubts, but not only that, but also like struggling with the idea of isolation, because I think that's a big aspect of where people really kind of get down into the muck and where they feel stuck and they feel like there's no way out as they get into this place where they feel isolated, right? They feel like they're all alone. They feel like there's nobody that can relate to them, that has experienced anything that they have experienced, that feel the way that they feel. So, right, they're isolated, and that hopelessness and that despair sets in. And unfortunately, then in cases like that, I think that's when we see the self-inflicted wounds, whether it's
Yeah.
they actually take their own life, or an attempt to take their own life, or they do something in an attempt to just ease the pain. Because for them, us looking on the outside, we're like, man, why did they just reach out? Why did they pick up the phone call? Why did they do that? Why would they end it this way? And for us, we're like, that doesn't, it logically doesn't make sense. But what we have to understand is, for somebody in that situation, in that moment where, like, it is so intense, it is so overwhelmingly impossible for them to see the upside to it, right? To see a way out, that they just feel completely isolated, alone, right? And then the devil comes in and he's a liar, and he'll capitalize on that, and he'll feed you these untruths. But those are the moments where, for them, that is a logical decision, right? For them, they're like, this is the way that I end my pain and my suffering. So and we need to understand that on the other side. Like, yeah, for us, it looks like it's rash, it's not logical. But for somebody who's just really just wants the pain to stop, it's a logical thing. But we know, right? We know on the other side of that, that is a permanent solution to what? A temporary problem. Not to say that it's not going to be hard, not to say that it is not going to be a battle to get yourself out of that, to get yourself in a place where you feel somewhat like yourself again. But there's people, there's resources that are available. And so if you're somebody that's there, that you feel that way right now, do not hesitate to reach out and make use of resources, because you're not alone. You're not the only one that's struggling. There's people that want to help, and do not listen to the lies that are being told to you, that there's nobody there, that there's nobody that can understand you, that can feel the way that you feel, that you're alone. It's because that's what it is. It's lies. So
Yeah.
and I know that, and I'm sure that you'll echo all of that.
For sure. Yeah. Like I said, just the ups and downs of the emotions, you kind of start to think, oh, something's wrong with you, until you talk to other like-minded people. Like, obviously, some of the people that I find the toughest people, and I would think, they don't feel like me. They're big and strong. I look up to them, and then they tell me, and I'm
Yep.
like, oh, this is normal. I'm like, okay. And then I can tell that they're relieved by telling me how they feel, and then I tell them how I feel, and it's really good. And that's one thing I like about our peer support unit too, and the training that we got. That it's good having the little mini blocks of you kind of just go lay it all out on the line to each other, and
Yeah.
you work with these people that you would never guess some of the things they've been through, and then it just kind of makes talking about all the bad stuff normal, and it makes you feel better after. It's like this huge weight that's relieved. You think, oh no, they're going to look at me different. They're going to think, oh, I'm weak, or they're going to think I can't handle this. I can't do that. Then you tell them, and it's just the biggest respect for each other you could ever have. Like, we're human.
Yeah, and being able to talk about it, and having that, just that ability to, especially, after an incident, right? It helps to take that emotional fuse out of that situation, right? Where it doesn't fester, doesn't build, and 20 years later, it just develops into some type of presenting concern that, if dealt with, right then, it could have been, sidelined. But so, knowing what you've kind of walked through, and knowing kind of the current state of where we're at in the law enforcement culture, what is some advice that you would give to somebody who just walked through, a critical incident, or maybe even a similar incident in nature to yours? What's some advice you'd give them?
Don't ignore the dark feelings. Don't push them off to the side. I'm lonely. I don't like this. It's not work. Like, what's the point? Those kind of feelings, they start trickling in a little bit. Don't ignore those. That could be a big deal. And it doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean nothing's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to somebody. And ultimately, our whole peer support group, if you don't have peer support at your HC or anything like that, reach out to your best friend, because I can tell you, they're not going to want to live without you. You're ultimately, I always think of it like this, law enforcement officers that commit suicide due to some critical incidents and stuff building up, I don't think they're crazy. I don't think anything's wrong with them. But like you said, they're just hurting, and it's the quickest fix. But what they don't understand is now we're all hurting forever. I don't want to lose my best friend to that. So that's ultimately just not only for yourself, for all the others, that you care about, your family and stuff. It's hard to see in the moment, but don't ignore the dark feelings. Try to get out. If you cannot be isolated, definitely don't be isolated. It's not going to make anything better. You might think, oh, I'm going to sit at the house. I feel better here. Um, Especially substance abuse. People start drinking a lot and stuff. I'm not a big drinker, but I know when I was home and people were over, started doing it. I never really drink, but it was just kind of I can sit on the couch and that's all I can do. Ultimately, gained a bunch of weight, felt like crap about myself. So by the time I got back, I'm like, oh, I need to start going to the gym. That's where I'm being more proactive now, knowing that, okay, I need to become the best version of myself. And I think that's where other people need to take that too, that alcohol's not going to fix your problems. You might feel good in the moment, but it just makes things 10 times worse. Even illegal drug use, I've heard of some stories of law enforcement officers that get involved in that, try to cope. It's not worth it. You're risking your career, and not only that, your mental health is going to go to crap.
Yeah.
So just ultimately reach out, no matter how you feel. I'm telling you that you're not going to be looked at as weak. You're not going to be looked at as less than. I can promise you, you talk to me, nobody else is going to ever know you talk to me about it. I can assure you. And I don't know. I think that's where we got to do a better job trying to portray it. I mean, obviously, we got the law here in Florida that, it protects all the confidentiality, but just trying to reinforce that to your friends that, no, man, I promise I'm not going to tell anybody, like, you have my word. And I think that's ultimately, that's what you got to do. You got to reach out, especially if you're feeling a certain way. And that's where us as friends, coworkers, peer support, everything, we need to do a better job at realizing he's going through something. He's normally always in this mood, and he's been withdrawn. He doesn't want to come out with us. He doesn't want to go to lunch with us. He's been very irritable. He's being lazy at work or something. Just notice those little signs and symptoms, basically, and that's where we need to be proactive and be like, bro, tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, lay it out to me. What's wrong? That's where us too, we fall short sometimes. That I don't want to bother him. He's going through something. I don't want to bother him. I don't want to make him mad at me. But ultimately, you might be the reason you saved his life. He might be thinking of going home and taking his patrol weapon and ending it all because he thinks that nobody cares about him. And just that simple act of you saying, bro, what's wrong? Tell me. You might think, oh, somebody's actually paying attention. They've noticed me. So.
Yeah, and I just wrote an article here recently on, and I put it up in the app, and it's entitled, King/Queen of Your Castle, right? And it's just this idea that we have in the law enforcement community, first responder community, right? That we're the king or queen of our castle, right? So like we have to protect our castle, right? Essentially ourselves, right? So we put all these barriers up, all these protective measures, but what happens when the battle and the attack is from the inside, right?
Yeah.
From within inside your own castle, and you've got resources, you've got neighboring people that want to come and help, but you're so fixated on protecting your castle that you won't lower your drawbridge to let somebody else in and to help you. And I feel like that's where we are. I feel like we've got a lot of resources, we've got a lot of people that will come to the aid, will be your ally, but you've got to let down that castle defense. You've got to get past this idea that we have to internalize everything, even if the battle's within, right? Whether it's spiritual in nature or emotional, whether it's cognitive, we've got to get to that place where it's like, no, it's okay to put down the drawbridge and let other people in, because essentially, this idea that we're the last stronghold on the mountaintop, it's not true, right?
Yeah.
We're not the last stronghold. We're not the last person the last holdout. So we've got to get past this mindset, and I think that's where the disconnect is coming between the resources that are available and then individuals making use of the resources. Is like there's just this idea that I'm the only one. It's my castle. It's my fight, and I've got to be the one to do it. And you don't have to. You don't have to be the one to do it alone. So
yeah, that comes back to feeling like we've all heard it. Oh well, you don't know what I'm going through. You've never done this. How do you know how I feel?
And that's true, right? And that's true.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption, and that's what I've told people to myself. I don't know exactly what you're feeling. I want to. Help me understand what you're going through. I want to help you. And just, sometimes it's just being that ear, you have a bad day at work and just, I'm going to talk my coworker's ear off. I'm going to tell them all how bad I am, oh, this made me so mad, yada, yada. And then after I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Got it all out of my system.
No. Well, we've talked a lot about different things. We kind of got serious there for a minute, but so to kind of just lighten it up, and before we start to wrap up, what is one of the most awkward calls or funniest calls that you've been a part of, in your career so far?
There's a couple. Myself and Deputy Tripp, we responded to a call. It came out as like it was going to be a domestic or something. Or this lady's son, he wasn't acting right, basically. So possible, Baker Act criteria and stuff. She said maybe some mental health disorders. She hadn't really portrayed us the fact that he really, he was disabled. So he had Down syndrome. He was nonverbal and he was autistic. So it was just a myriad of issues. We get there and he's got poop all over him. He's covered in poop. And he decides that he's going to smack Deputy Tripp in the face. And for people that don't know, Deputy Tripp, he has a mustache. So I always joke that's how he got his mustache, because it hit him in the face and it swiped him. So that was one of the more funny ones, because he wasn't really a real threat to us. He was just, he has all these issues, and we treated him with respect. We didn't fight him or anything like that. We got him in the car just fine. But that was kind of funny to me, because I always joke to Deputy Tripp, I'm like, that's how you got your mustache, from the poop all over the hands.
Oh man, that's funny.
Been to some roast calls, obviously,
And they always involve like poop and naked people, like
for sure.
And sometimes it's the combination of the two together.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I got to actually go to a call, and I actually felt like this one's not really funny or anything like that. But shortly after I came back, I went to a call with the dude with a gunshot wound to his legs, similar area. So I got to go there. I got to talk to him, and I stayed calm as can be, because I knew I'd been through it. So I'm like, Look, man, I'm like, it's going to hurt. They're going to get here. I walked him through it all. I'm like, it's going to feel like this. He's asking me, am I going to die? And brother, you're looking fine to me. I'm not going to make a promise, yes or no. I don't know. I'm not the Lord, but, you're looking fine to me. Don't look down. Keep talking. But at the same time I was talking to him, it was weird. My legs were throbbing. It was like a physical response to what was going on. So I was kind of like, oh, that was a little weird, But he ultimately made it. So
good. So have you received any nicknames since your incident?
Yeah, for sure. So my lieutenant, he calls me Tupac. They always joke. So
yeah,
they always joke.
I had to ask that because I had heard that your nickname was Tupac, right?
Tupac. Yep. That's one of them, and then 50 Cent. So.
Yeah. So as we
kind of tell people,
go ahead. Oh. Sorry.
No. I was saying they always tell people too. My lieutenant, when he sees like a trainee or something, he'll go, "Make sure you wear your vest around this guy. He's not good luck."
No. Well, as we kind of start wrapping it up, just one last thing I want to kind of dive into real quick with you. So, I mean, obviously, there's been a lot that's transpired for you, in the last year, but how much has your faith, kind of got you to where you are now, or, you know, has changed since the incident? And you kind of already hit on that a little bit, but
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, I've always believed, but I'm not gonna lie, this job, I kind of let it get in the way, if it
yeah,
makes sense, because you see the bad every day and stuff. And sometimes, I think doubt's a bad word, but at the same time, you kind of doubt. You're like, man, well, how can this happen? How can this infant die?
oh
That's
yeah,
not fair. Like, and you kind of get that like internal, that stuff. So I kind of just stopped going to church, and I grew up going to church, and then I'd go on and off, and stuff. Ever since this happened, though, prayer, priority stuff, just thanking God for everything that I have and everything that, you know, He's given me. And through this, ultimately, I'm looking at this more of, I'm thankful this happened to me. Like, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord, for all that you do for me to make me realize, it was like a wake up call. I truly feel it was like a wake up call. Like, hey, get your life in check. This is your second chance.
Mm.
Okay. So obviously, I'm definitely more consistent with church now. Pray more, read my Bible. So I'm still not perfect. Still working on it.
Well,
I'm not going to lie to you there.
I'm gonna let you in on a secret that nobody is.
Yeah.
There's only one perfect person, and
Yep.
and he was killed for that. So, but 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 that's what we do, right? We strive to be better. And that's what we do, right? We strive to be more Christ-like in what we do, and making sure that we're spending that time reading, jumping in the Bible, reading the Bible, and growing and maturing that relationship we have with the Lord. I mean, that's what we do. We strive to grow and mature in that. And we're never going to be perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
eventually, one day we will be, right? When
Mhm.
when the good Lord calls us home, at that moment we will be. But until then, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a struggle, man. So.
Well, thank you for that new perfect body up there too. I almost said, thank you. I'm looking good, God.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and share just your experience and just your perspective. Since that, and I think that's good. I think it's good for other people to hear that. I think it's good, just for other people to know, like, hey, look, you're not alone if you've experienced an incident like this. You're not alone if you are, kind of struggling right now with feeling isolated and feeling alone, and that there are resources available. So I appreciate you taking the time and jumping on.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
Definitely, just talking about it again, it makes you feel so much better.
Absolutely. So, all right, Kenny, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you tuning in and listening to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and share this resource with your fellow officers. The goal of Critical Aspects is to serve, support, and sustain the law enforcement professionals. So head over to www.criticalaspects.org for more resources and information. And as always, God bless and be safe.